Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The attacks last week in Paris demonstrated the savagery with which terrorists seek to divide us. The murderous intolerance, the bigotry that they pursue aims to spread fear and also to sow division that they believe exists, us against them. Paris has not let the terrorists win, and we must not do so either. The French police have been praised for their actions that they took. Charlie Hebdo is being published today. Faiths have united, abhorring the anti-Semitism and grieving for the victims of the attack on the kosher supermarket. Muslims across the world have condemned an attack which is not Islamic and is not in the name of their religion. And the brother of the French Muslim police officer, Ahmed Merabet, has said, "My brother was killed by people who pretend to be Muslims. They are terrorists. That's it." The Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition rightly attended the Unity rally in Paris along with the Prime Minister, and I joined people in Trafalgar Square on Saturday, raising pens in solidarity with the Je suis Charlie cause. In the attack, the terrorists targeted other peaceful religions, they targeted writers, they targeted those whose job it is to keep us safe. In other words, they targeted both liberty and security. And the response of democratic governments everywhere to these sorts of attacks must be to defend both. Governments need to keep our people safe so that we can enjoy the very freedoms that our democracy depends on. So let me turn to the specific issues in the Home Secretary's statement. I am concerned about the rushed way the Home Secretary has made this statement today, as I did not see the statement before coming into the House, and I hope that she can set out what the reasons were and what has changed in the Home Office position this morning that meant that the statement was changed at late notice. I welcome the action taken by the intelligence agencies and police to support their counterparts in Paris, and I think the whole House will want to pay tribute to the work of our security and intelligence services and the counter-terror police who do so much to keep us safe. It is important that they have the resources they need, and I welcome the resources the Home Secretary referred to today. As she said, the government has a counter-terror bill going through Parliament right now, which we have supported and continue to support, and which includes restoring the relocation powers for serious terror suspects that she abolished 4 years ago, as we called for to be reinstated. And she will know that the agencies have pointed to the threat in this country, the ongoing threat, posed by the estimated 300 people returning from the conflict in Syria. Could she tell us whether any of those estimated 300 have been prosecuted? Could she also confirm that none of them are currently subject to TPIMs, even though these powers are supposed to be for dangerous suspects whose activity needs to be restricted to keep us safe? Can she tell us whether the security service and the police are now reviewing all of those cases to see whether TPIMs could help, especially with relocation powers restored, or whether there is anything further that needs to change to those TPIM powers, which are different from the previous control orders? Could she also tell us how many of the estimated 300 have engaged with the Channel programme, and does she agree that we should now make that compulsory for those returning, which is something that the counter-terror bill does not yet do? On the issue of access to dangerous weapons, she will also know there's been concern about reduced custom and border checks. What action is she taking to increase border checks for dangerous weapons? Mr. Speaker, the Home Secretary also raised the issue about communications data. Technology is changing all the time, and that means the law needs to keep up, both in terms of the capabilities of the agencies to get the vital intelligence we need and in terms of the oversight that we need. In July, Parliament supported emergency legislation to ensure the agencies and police could maintain vital capabilities. And this month, the Commons supported extending those powers to ensure that IP addresses are covered in the same way as telephone numbers. And in July, all parties agreed to support a review by David Anderson, the independent reviewer of terrorism, into both the powers and the oversight needed to keep up with changing technology. The Home Secretary referred to the previous Communications Data Bill. That was rejected 3 years ago by the joint committee that was established by the government to scrutinise it, because they said then that it was too vague, too widely drawn, and put too much power directly in the hands of the Home Secretary. They recommended that new legislation needed be drawn up in a far more limited way and that the government should provide more evidence and clarity about what they wanted to achieve. Since then, the Home Secretary has not come forward with any revised proposals. She has not come forward to me to discuss them or put forward proposals to Parliament, even though we have said we were happy to discuss details with her. Given the urgency she says there now is, can I ask her why she did not come forward with revised proposals after the conclusions of the Joint Committee 3 years ago? In July, she was happy to agree to the review by David Anderson, which is due to report before the election. Today, she has not mentioned that review. Has she now discarded that statutory review, or will she be waiting for its conclusions? This is an extremely important issue, and the detail matters. The detail about the powers and the capabilities that our intelligence agencies need, but also the details about the safeguards and the oversight that are needed as well. We agree that the police and agencies do need to get the intelligence to keep us safe and need updated legislation, and we also need safeguards and stronger oversight to make sure that powers are effectively and appropriately used. But I would strongly caution the Home Secretary and the Liberal Democrats against setting up a caricatured argument between them about security on the one hand and liberty on the other, because we need to protect both in our democracy, and we need a responsible debate on getting the detail right. The terrorists on that first day targeted both the writers and police officers. Charlie Hebdo's editor had police protection to protect his freedom of speech. That shows the strong link between our security and our liberty in any democracy. Mr. Speaker, we know too the most important thing to keep us safe in any democracy is making sure we have the cohesive communities that can prevent hatred spreading. We have supported extending Prevent onto a statutory footing. I hope the Home Secretary will also now listen to the concerns we have raised over some years that more needs to be done to have community-led programmes to tackle the hatred, to challenge the spread of extremism, including through social media as well as in local communities and organisations, and I hope she will work with local government to that effect. And can I also ask her if she is working with the Community Safety Trust on tackling anti-Semitism, because we need to tackle all forms of extremism. Terrorists try to silence us, to cow us and to divide us. Paris has shown, as millions marched and as we stood in solidarity with them, that we will not be silenced, we will not give in to fear, and we will not give in to division as we defend our democracy. Because although some were targeted in Paris, we know this is about all of us. Je suis juif, je suis flic, je suis Ahmed, and je suis Charlie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I first of all apologise to the Shadow Home Secretary for her late receipt of the statement. I apologise to her privately before when we came into the chamber, and I'm happy to reiterate that apology here on the floor of the House. Can I also join her in paying tribute to our counter-terrorist police, and indeed all our police, but also our security and intelligence agencies. I think we cannot say it often enough that these are people who are working day and night to keep us safe and to protect us. Many of them are unseen and unknown, and for obvious reasons if they are part of our security and intelligence agencies. But we are grateful to them for the work that they do. I think we should, as I say, pay public recognition of the important role that they play. She asked me a number of questions covering a number of issues in this area. Can I tell her that in relation to reviews, there is no suggestion, simply because a review was not mentioned in my statement, that we have in any way sidetracked that review. David Anderson is doing his work. He's undertaking, as far as I'm aware, a number of discussions with relevant parties about the issues that he is looking at. Alongside that, of course, our own Parliamentary Intelligence and Security Committee is conducting its work in looking at the questions of privacy and civil liberties and security. And these key reviews, I think, will come forward in a time that will enable this House to be able to take account of those reviews when it does the job that it will be necessary for it to do, which is at least looking at the DRIPA legislation, which has a sunset clause for 2016, but obviously wanting to take account of all the aspects that have come forward in those two reviews. In relation to the TPIMs, of course, the government does publish on a quarterly basis the number of people who are under TPIMs, and the question as to whether somebody should be put on a TPIM is a matter for the security service to initiate a request to me as Home Secretary. I, of course, then look at that request, and if I agree that request, there is then a judicial a court process that is gone through in order to ensure that that decision is reasonable. And as I say, it is a matter for the security service to come forward with any proposals on that. The Right Honourable Lady asked about making Channel compulsory, and the Leader of the Opposition also raised it in Prime Minister's questions. We do believe that Channel does do important work, as Prevent does important work, and Prevent does work with community groups. But on relation to Channel, I think the decision as to whether an individual should be put into a Channel programme is one that should be taken on a case-by-case basis. We're very clear, and have been, in the discussions on the CT and Security Bill in relation to the temporary exclusion orders, where it will be possible to ensure that people returning from Syria are returning on our terms, where that is felt to be appropriate, that it may be that action of various sorts may then be sought in relation to those individuals in the UK, but that does need to be on a case-by-case basis as to what is appropriate for the particular individual concerned. In relation to the question of firearms, I think there is an issue for us working with others in the European Union to look at the spread of firearms across the European Union. As I said, we have some of the toughest gun laws here in the United Kingdom, but we have already seen major exercises being undertaken, led by the National Crime Agency primarily, in looking at the question of availability of firearms here in the UK, and that had started before we saw these terrible attacks take place in Paris. On the Communications Data Bill, there is a difference of opinion among parties in this House as to what powers should be taken by government. We did, in fact, respond to the proposals from the Joint Committee, and we did, in fact, provide revised proposals in relation to those measures. I am clear, the Prime Minister is clear, that this is an issue that does need to be returned to, and it is important, I believe, that we have the right powers that are available to be able to deal with these issues. And finally, she asked me if we speak to the CST. Of course, we do speak with the CST on a regular basis, and I have had a number of meetings with them, but also, of course, the police have meetings with them and discuss with them the whole question of the protective security that is available, and protective security had been stepped up once when the threat level was raised, but has been stepped up further.